I haven't caught up with any West Ham news all week, but I wanted to focus on one story that came out on Thursday. The main headline is that it's been suggested David Sullivan and Daniel Kretinsky are now equal partners at West Ham United. According to Christian Purslow, he stated on the Football Boardroom YouTube podcast that Kretinsky and Sullivan have upped their shares to own 40% each. Now, if you're new to this channel, or if you watched the West Ham Voice before, a QR code has just appeared in the top corner there. If you click on that after the show, it takes you straight to the subscription page. Become a subscriber if you enjoy the content. Costs nothing to become a subscriber. If you enjoy this particular video, there's a like button somewhere down below. Please click on that because it helps the algorithms in YouTube to elevate the channel. And there's also a hype button. If you click on that, that promotes the video for other people to watch on YouTube. So thank you for all that. So who is Christian Purslow? Well, he co-hosts the Footy Boardroom podcast with journalist Henry Winter. Purslow is a British businessman who was most recently the chief executive officer at Aston Villa. He was also the former managing director of Liverpool, and he was also head of commercial global activities at Chelsea. So Purslow has some skin in how football teams are run. Now, Daniel Kretinsky is reported to have upped his stake by 13% to increase it to 40% overall, and David Sullivan reported to have increased his stake by 1.2% to go from 38.8% again to 40%. Now, there's no detail as to what Kretinsky and Sullivan might have paid to increase their sharehold. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that the club is worth 800 mil. That means in order to increase his stake, Kretinsky will have had to fork out something like £104 million to buy the additional 13% of shares. And Sullivan would have paid about 9.6 million to up his stake by 1.2%. But with the landscape not yet certain about West Ham's future, I'd be very, very surprised whether both Kretinsky or Sullivan will have agreed to pay anything for these extra shares right now. See, we're all aware that should we get relegated, the value of the share price is going to inevitably go down. So I'm a bit puzzled by this story. When a West Ham source was asked about it, the reply was simply they couldn't comment on any confidential matters. So that makes it even less clear. And if, I guess we're going to have to wait and see whether this is going to be corroborated over the next few days. Now, if true, what does it mean for West Ham's future? Well, it might seem, or it could seem, that perhaps Daniel Kretinsky may finally start to be taking more interest in how West Ham United is run. Now, with an equal share to Sullivan's, it means that decisions will have to be agreed between both major shareholders, so Sullivan will not be able to make crucial decisions about West Ham all on his own. Now, things like recruiting managers, recruiting a director of football, and the commercial deals, etc., will have to be, sort of agreed by both parties. However, Kretinsky and Sullivan couldn't be any more different when it comes to doing business. Sullivan works through personal networks, agents, intermediaries, long-standing contacts. He prefers opportunistic deals, which are not always the best deal in the long run for the club. He often reacts to situations rather than helping to shape them. And we've seen him to do this sort of over and over again in the time that he's been at West Ham. You've only got to look at the way we recruit our managers to understand the process that Sullivan adopts. Now, historically, he's built his wealth through high volume, high margin, short cycle businesses, adult media, property, loans, and so on. I guess the style that he adopts, is if the price is right, I'll do it. And then we got Daniel Kretinsky. He builds his business through investment banks, institutional deal pipelines, structured processes. His specialism is to target distressed, undervalued, or strategically mispriced assets. Now, I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Kretinsky never seems to dive into a deal. He does months of due diligence with his team of analysts. He's into business deals for the long term. He looks for long-term cash flow, not quick wins. And I guess his style is described as, does this fit my 5, 10, 15-year business portfolio? So whilst I've always stated that Kretinsky is at West Ham purely on an investment basis, perhaps finally, with his investment at risk, he may well decide to take a step forward to have more say in how his money is being used. Or should I say, his representatives will on the West Ham board. But would this be a seismic shift for Kretinsky? We've only got to look at what he's done at Sparta Prague. He's the club that he's been a fan of since his boyhood. When he bought that club, he did very little for a number of years. The fans became impatient with him and wanted to know what his ambitions were as a major shareholder of that club. And in the past few years, all of a sudden, Sparta have now become more prominent. After several barren years, Sparta won the league title in the 23-24 season. In fact, they did the double that season by winning the Czech Cup as well. Now, Kretinsky has now promised fans that he's going to build them a state-of-the-art stadium by 2030. So, in the past few years, he's paid more attention to Sparta Prague. Could he now do this at West Ham? Look, I'm going to go back to the type of companies he specializes in: distressed, undervalued, strategically mispriced. Now, one can't say that at the time that he decided to invest in West Ham, we were anything like that. We were riding high in Europe, doing reasonably well in the league, and Kretinsky bought in when Gold and Sullivan were valuing the club at around £630 million. We hardly seemed to be in any sort of crisis at that time. But I would imagine that he was probably sold a dream that it won't be long before West Ham would be valued at £1 billion, hence earning him a very tidy profit on his investment. But as I said, Kretinsky and his team would have done their due diligence to work out whether this deal was worth investing in at all. And it seemed that for Kretinsky, it certainly made sense to do so. But this valuation of £1 billion hasn't happened, and many question whether West Ham really are worth anywhere near that. Not even worth probably the 800 million I mentioned a moment ago. In fairness, look, if we get relegated, West Ham's value will drop, and maybe, just maybe, this will be right up Kretinsky's street. If our value plummets because of relegation, could Kretinsky make his move to take full control of West Ham? I would imagine buried deep in the contracts that were agreed between all parties, there's likely to be some clause in there that suggests what the club would be worth if relegated. With our huge debts as well, all of a sudden, this is the kind of business Kretinsky would relish taking full control of. Certainly distressed, financially that is. Undervalued? Well, not whilst we're languishing in the Championship, but certainly the value will rise again should we get promoted. Now, Henry Winter and Christian Purslow discussed West Ham's financial predicament, and it will still be a bad situation if we stay up, but immeasurably much worse if we go down. Kretinsky at that point may want to buy Sullivan out and go about completely restructuring this football club to give it a chance of survival and a chance to return to top flight football with a much better base to work from. We all know that we'll have to sell players even if we do stay up, but at the same time, the shareholders will need to seriously consider investing money into this club in order to give it a chance to return to top flight football. But the longer it takes to return to the Premier League, the more damage financially will happen. And Kretinsky won't want that. He didn't buy into West Ham to fork money out to keep it afloat. But a short, sharp injection of cash in the summer in order to get it healthy again, both financially and on the football pitch, might be worth doing, which would benefit Kretinsky's approach in how he does his business. So is that what he's waiting for? It's a big risk. If he's waiting for us to get relegated in order for the value to decrease and then buy Sullivan out, it's a gamble, but maybe Kretinsky thinks it's a gamble worth taking. I've got to be honest with you. I'm still not convinced that Kretinsky is our saviour. I'm still not convinced he's our answer to all the problems that we have at West Ham. But Kretinsky is a shrewd businessman who will want to protect his investment. Could it lead him to taking over this club completely? Possibly, but I can only think he will want to do this so that he can build up the value, get some agreement on the London Stadium, then flip the whole club for a very substantial and healthy profit. I guess time will tell what his plans truly are.